Nous allons commencer dans
Hello,
quelques instants.
everybody, and welcome. It will be starting.
We're just going to allow all of you to join the meeting. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue. Encore quelques instants pour que tout le monde puisse se joindre. Nous sommes déjà rendus à 200 quelques
Wait
participants.
for some more of our guests to join us. There's already almost 250 participants,
Parfait, ça semble se stabiliser pour tout de suite. Alors,
and things seem to be stable for the time being. So, first of all, greetings, welcome. It's a pleasure to be with you once again for this second webinar. My name is Alexandre Bacon, and the last meeting played. I was the MC at the last meeting and a facilitator as for today's meeting, which will be a bit shorter than the last one, the last webinar. It's the second of 5 webinars today, which will be taking place throughout the coming months for the to prepare the reconciliation forum that is set for next spring. We also wanted to mention that you have access to interpretation services.
simultaneous translation services that we are provided with. So just click on the icon on the down right of your screen. So just choose the language of your choice. La plupart des présentations aujourd'hui, je pense même la
The
totalité.
presentations today, I think all of the presentations will be done in French. So, which will not be the case, of course, for the presentations of all the coming webinars. But for today, the presentations will all be done in the French language. There's some of you, most of you come from Quebec, but there are some people here from all over Canada. We even have someone who's listening from Algeria. And so these are some of the perks of the virtual nature of our meetings. We have to work that way, but this could perhaps open other opportunities. So let's see the bright side of things. And that allows this format allows people to follow us, people from throughout the planet to follow us on these different cross-cutting themes. There are some items that, if we wish, that are recognized, they're cross-cutting issues, which could also apply to similar situations elsewhere in the world. So before going into the rules of order for the meeting, don't look for the mute button or the one for the camera. And we have automatically closed your cameras and muted your microphones throughout today's meeting. But we'll invite you, if you wish to participate, to use the chat window or the other window. It says it's on the bottom of the screen, QTR, FAQ, questions and answers, Q&A. I'll come back to explain how to use these functions. And also, just before we start, as you know, it's really important for First Nations and Inuit to invite an elder to share and do an opening prayer and to share a vision so that they have continuing our reflections during the meeting and throughout the process. We have the opportunity to be accompanied by Ms. Édith Picard and Élizabeth Ashini. I believe that today Ms. Ashini will be offering us her testimonial to start the first part of today's webinar. So that's why I want to ask Ms. Édith Picard, who is a Wendat elder, to start things off for some words of welcome and just introduce Ms. Picard in a few words. She is a grandmother of 7 grandchildren as well, a large family. Her family is her source of wealth and pride. And as when that from a Quebec father, when that father and a Quebec father is a nurse in training, yes, one of 4 children. She was diagnosed with breast cancer and worked for though she worked for the women having diagnosis with breast cancer, and to have the courage and determination when she was working with the Health Commission. She has a complementarity. She represents this solidarity and recognition. Ms. Picard, thank you for being there. So I'll leave the floor to you for a few moments. Okay. Hello. For some days now, I was talking about accessibility. I'm talking about an image to seize certain words. It's during my daily walk. I often walk along the path along the trails along the St. Charles River in one of the sections that remains open during the winter. I just have to walk a few hundred meters to see the river, but it seems inaccessible at the first glance because it's at the bottom of the cliff. But just with a short distance, there's a slope that has been arranged for this with a boardwalk, and on the other side where we can be along the river, and there's a place where kayakers put their kayaks in the water in the spring. So during one of my walks, I started making a connection with accessibility, tracing a path and maintaining it, and creating a boardwalk or a bridge to bring together the two shores. We talk about a negotiation to design the area, to identify the best place, to plan, to clear out an area while respecting the environment. And some places you will have to structure one place, another place to adjust a slope, and to have specialists to build stairs and railings, and to have equipment as well for people to have access in the winter. So we talk about accessibility to studies is like a path and a journey, and I see many parallels here. The bridge allows us to appreciate the environment from another perspective, to recognize the particularities, like a view we can have of traditional culture on different foreign domains to discover, and the trail to be taken. And also this gateway, this walkway, allows us to fill bridge gaps. And we see how we can bridge these gaps between health services, for example, between the communities and in the institutions as well. And with the link to trauma and the putting a kayak in the water is like starting studies, entering a waterway. It's like entering a field of studies. So we talk about our traditions of passing on these lessons as a first form of learning as well, for a mutual, for the will and the motivation to learn, and the differences which could be complementary. So you are all welcome and essential here. Thank you very much, Ms. Picard. It's greatly appreciated. And in the process that we're continuing for respect of our traditions and our values, it's greatly appreciated. And we also have the opportunity to hear the testimonial of another elder is Elizabeth Ashini. So before leaving the floor to her, I would like to mention, like last time, you will have the possibility of asking questions. You can do this as we go through the module, the Q&A module. It's in this module that we invite you to send us your questions. And if you wish to make a comment or an idea, you can put these in hyperlinks to existing resources, and you can use these as we invite you to put these in the chat window, which is on the right-hand part of your screen, the bottom right-hand part. So this discussion is recorded, and the present webinar is being directly broadcast on Facebook. And before we go any further, you've certainly received a link, a Zoom link towards the presence of our webinar, and there's a participant's guide that allow us to follow the proposed agenda. So after Ms. Ashini's message, right after this, we'll also have other top quality speakers who will be coming to presenting the different facets of accessibility to post-secondary studies for First Peoples. It's Ms. Kathleen Jourdain, Mr. Christopher Fletcher, but also and Ms. Hannis, who is the director of the Kiuna Institute. And at the very end, I think we all want to take advantage of all the expertise of the network. There's over 250 of you today. And with the great diversity of the group, you are disposed of a great deal of expertise. And this is what we allow you to do during the webinar. And we work through this tool. We have the link to add your comments. I also wish to mention is okay, and this is the second of 5 webinars which will be held in the upcoming months. You put these dates on your calendar, so we'll have our National Forum and Reconciliation will be held in Wendake virtually. In the current context, of course, we have to wish to mind you that one of the 5 themes of the webinars, which will be held, were agreed upon and through work meetings, First Nations organizations and Inuit organizations have participated over the last month. So the idea to do a common work and joint effort, a common reflection. And this is an element that seems university institution, post-secondary institution, but also First Nations and Inuit organizations to see what issues have to be put forward if we truly wish to improve all the dimensions concerning post-secondary education and First Nations and Inuit. So the webinar seeks to deepen our understanding of issues and levers to favor reconciliation and education, and allow us to concretely identify different possible actions that are specific to their organizations in order to move forward in the implementation of recommendations coming from different commissions over the last years. And finally, to stimulate or to a mobilization process within your organization, seeking to define the commitments that they can make which could allow us to publicize the forum framework, the framework of the forum to be held in September 2021. Accessibility to post-secondary studies for First Nation students and for the First Peoples is an issue as a law of law. It's been there for years, for over a century. Many obstacles have been set in the path of First Nations and Inuit people who wanted to have access to post-secondary education, and the education experience could have been traumatic in many regards regarding to the policies related to the Indian residential schools. And with the amendment of the C-15 in 1920, the parents of First Nations had the legal obligation to allow their children to be sent to the Indian residential schools, and until the last amendment of the Indian Act in 1952, a First Nations member who wanted to register for university had to abandon all of their rights. So you could not register in the university while retaining your Indigenous rights. So this wasn't that long ago. And there's much to be done. This being said, it's not only there's not only a negative side to all of these stories and experience of the First Nations and Inuit who have managed to make progress through the school institutions once they gained access to them. And it would be great to hear a testimonial from a friend who's been with us from the beginning, Ms. Élizabeth Ashini, who is an Inuit elder, who you've probably seen if you were attended the last webinar. She's from Matimkush, like John. She's a mother of 3 children. She's born on the land, and she crossed the Tasinan, the Innu territory, until the age of 9 with her parents and family. Then she was sent to a residential school for 7 years. She will tell us about this. And then she took training and was trained as a nurse, which led her to work in the Quebec system and led her career amongst the Innu. And since her retirement, she's given herself a personal mission to share her knowledge with the next generation. So thank you, Ms. Ashini, for being there. We'll just help you turn on your camera. There's always a few, could be a few. Yes, we hear your magnificent voice. We just ask you to turn on your camera, please. You can turn on the camera. Yes, please. Video, that's it? Okay, yes. How is it now? Nope, not yet. Okay. The facilitator asked you to turn on your video. I guess that's what it is. Is that it? Can you hear me? Yes? Can you hear me? But I still don't see you. You got to see me. You have to see me. Oh, there you are. No. Elizabeth? To move forward or to pivot your camera so that we can see your whole face? We just see up to your nose. At the top of the head. There. Okay, that's better. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. The floor is yours. She's speaking in the Inuit language. There's no translation for this part.
Elle écrit oui.
Oui.
She wrote yes. She doesn't hear me.
Oui, mais je pense qu'elle ne peut pas prendre la parole. Elle dit
I
oui,
don't
mais
think
pour
she
une
can speak.
question.
And she said, I love you with kisses. And I say, I love you too. So, and I say hello. So for, I told you, just greeting everybody. And I'm happy to be with you, to try to give you tell you the story. I can provide a testimonial of my life. I can't tell you about this in 15 minutes because I've had a very long life. Like Alexandre said, I was born on the land in a tent delivered by a midwife to help my mother bring me into this world. I'm so proud to be born this way. I'm a First Nations woman through and through, and I'm proud of this. I lived 9 years with my parents in the bush. We went from Sept-Îles to my father's territory, and I saw how everything worked, how things went there. Sometimes it was a hard life. But they never got discouraged. That's how I lived up to the age of 9. At the age of 9, my mom said in June, because people went to their territory in June, they left the Moisy River with their canoe full of their children, with their tents and food. And I was 9 at the end of June. Said, Elizabeth, you're going to go to school. You're not going up to the land with us. And it was a great blow to my head. And it was like, when she told me this, I felt like I wanted to die. She said, you have to go to school and we'll continue to go to the woods. And your aunt will look after you. And I cried until they left, and I cried every day up to until school started in August. So my aunt looked after me. And the residential school opened in 1952, so I went to the residential school. It was an experience that I won't say it was really harmful, but it was really tough. It was really difficult. However, it were only the children they were not just Innu children. They said they called us Indian children there, but we were among Innu, so at least we understood each other. However, the nuns prohibited us from speaking our language. It wasn't easy because we were taken away from our homes.
Pour aller me faire entrer au pensionnat. Quand je suis rentrée au pensionnat, j'ai pas dit.
When I went to the residential school, I didn't say one word in French, and the nuns they were teaching us to write French and speak French. We were hit with rulers many times. We were sent to the wall. It was their way of punishing us because we didn't understand French. And each time that we went out of the classroom, they would watch us because we weren't allowed to speak Innu. We always had to speak French. And imagine somebody lives on the territory. It was very hard. And also for elementary school, it was difficult during the whole of my elementary school. I went to grade 7 until grade 7, and even then, if I go into details, it would be too long. But my residential school experience, I did not like this because they wanted to assimilate us, and they weren't successful in doing so. And they worked hard to assimilate us. In my grade 7th year, there was no high school there. And the principal sent us to Saint-Anne-de-la-Pocatière because in the school in Sept-Îles, they didn't want us there because we were Indians, we were too dirty, and we weren't welcome. So we went to Saint-Anne-de-la-Pocatière for the girls, and they sent the boys to Grande Bergeronne. Again, it was another hit over the head when they sent us to the convent. It was more difficult still because we couldn't see our parents or other people from the community. We were so... It was like going to jail. So when we arrived, they said, okay, you're going to wash yourselves, put your clothes in a bag, and we'll send this to the washing to get washed. And when we arrived, I didn't think I was that dirty. There were 10 of us girls who were going to high school, one from Bitsiamit, some from Washat Maliotenam, and I was at Shefferville. A bit later, I had beautiful long hair, and some of my friends had long hair. They cut our hair. They didn't want us to catch lice. They said, oh, if you have lice, you'll contaminate everyone, all the other students here, the white students. So that really hurt. I went through high school for 2 years. There were 10 of us girls there, but the third year, the girls left. They decided to go to Chicoutimi, but because I was in Shefferville, they said, you can't go there, you're too far. So I come to Sainte-Anne by train at 2 or 3 in the morning. I come to the convent and I go to bed. I was so looking forward to see my friends, and then I found out in the morning that I'm alone. Your friends aren't there, they're in Chicoutimi. I found this very, very difficult. I cried when my mother called from Shefferville. For a month and a half, every Sunday, I cried. And then she said, Elizabeth, I'll give you another week. Either you stay there, if not, you come back. I'll pick you up and bring you by plane to Chicoutimi if I have to. But I'm not going to keep you for a long time in Shefferville. I'll have to marry you off because if you're not studying, it's because you need to get married. So another week later, she calls me back, and I said, no, I'm continuing. I don't want to get married. I'm not ready to be married. I'll continue. So I continued for 2 years, and it was difficult for me in my schooling. It was hard in French, math, history wasn't too bad. I like that. I finished my high school with a diploma. I never failed a school grade. I started late, but I managed to finish on time. And before I left St. Anne, I registered at the nursing school in Quebec City at Hôpital Saint-Sacrement accepted me, and I left home in July, and I told my mom, I have something to tell you. I said, I received a letter. I am going to Saint-Sacrement. And she said, what are you going to do there? I said, I'm going to become a nurse. You finished school. You already have instruction? I said, no, Mom. It's not high school. With high school that I'll be able to work. I don't have a trade. She started to cry. I thought you had done studying. I said, no. I was leaving in a month. I had less difficulty leaving that time from home and leaving my friends because I knew that I would have a bit more freedom over there. It was one of my best experiences at the Hôpital Saint-Sacrement. The nuns and a lot of nurses took care of us. I never heard someone tell me that they didn't want me because I was an Indian. No, they were happy to see me. The patients as well. Only one nun there. I was in my second year of nursing. She said, Elizabeth, you'll have to leave. You won't be able to finish this. It's too hard for you. So she said, did you understand? You'll pack up your stuff. Go for your internship. And then you'll pack up and leave tomorrow. The director of the program really liked me. He called me his little Indian. And I passed in front of his office often. So that morning, he said, how are you doing, my little Indian? I said, I'm not going well at all. And when I told him what happened, she said, come and see me at noon. And I went to see them at noon, and they had thrown this nun out and sent her back to the convent. I had difficulties when I was doing this program. Sometimes I didn't understand medical terms. This is why I worked harder than my friends, my white friends. And I had difficulties. When this nun said, you won't be able to do this, I worked twice and 3 times as much and as hard to be successful. I was determined that I must continue and that I would come out of this and I will have completed the program. And in fact, I did complete my diploma. My mother and sisters came to my graduation. They were very proud, and so was I. I was so proud. We had an exam for the professional. I still have my diploma of having passed those exams. It's like a professional order at the time. And I'm very proud of that. I would have many things to say. With my nursing diploma, I was able to go back and work in Shefferville. This is where I met the father of my children. I have 3 wonderful boys, and I'm very proud of them. After 9 or 10 years, we went to Abitibi. I was a nurse at one point, and I wasn't able to work with animals, but the father of my children said, "You won't go to work. A woman must stay with her husband." And I said, "No." In 2 years, I'll apply at the hospital. And I did. And I was able to take care of my children. I left when my youngest was 20 years old. I went back to work that time, and I was so proud. I worked in many communities, Ouachat, Tsetzil, La Romaine, Bitsamit, and it's in Bitsamit where I retired. And I was happy with that. However, after my retirement, I did volunteer work. I visited with the Innu that were hospitalized, and I went as an interpreter. I also did palliative care, and I was happy to do that as well. This is why it is very, very important. Sometimes I tell the youth, persevere. Yes, sometimes it's hard, but you must not quit. It is very, very important. I would have so many things to say again, but I am proud of myself, proud of my parents. I don't know if you see them. No, you don't see them. My father and my mother are here behind me. And I'm there too, and we're cleaning fish. I watched my mom work a lot in the woods, how to prepare meat, the fish. I helped her a lot. This is why every year I would go to the George River with my son, Serge, to pass on my knowledge. And I think I am able to say that I am really Indian, that I have maintained my language even if I stayed for sometimes I can't find my words here, to have been for me and my children were raised with your culture and the indigenous culture. I thank you very much, and I love you. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Your testimonial is very moving. I'm not the only one who is touched by your story. I am sure that is full of resilience, and you went through some difficulties that were not easy for you and for many First Nations. Your pathway is a testimony to the difficulties that many people from the First Nations and Inuit peoples in the residential schools had to go through. You talked about the issues, the difficulties, the challenges on that pathway. I would like to congratulate you. Thank you for your testimony. Can I add something that I forgot? And I find this very important. In spite of all of the good things that I experienced at the residential school, once I had become an adult, I reflected on this and I thought that if I had not gone to the residential school, if my mother had not pushed me to go to school, I might not have become a nurse. That's what I was able to live. That was my subsistence. I was able to provide for my needs with that, and I'm proud of that. Thank you very much. You're not the only one to be proud. Your boys must be as well, and all of us too. When I look at the comments, the written comments we have here, everybody is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you so much. You really emphasize the different issues that you had to face, but that are still there for some of our students who do want to pursue higher education. So thank you very much once again. I think that there are many elements that you mentioned that we will find in the testimonies of the 11 ambassadors. Many of you at the last webinar appreciated the testimonies of our 11 ambassadors from each of the 11 nations here in Quebec, and to whom we asked what reconciliation meant for them in education. And more specifically here, we will look at what they said about the issues related to accessibility to higher education. So while we start this video, for all of those who have just joined us, we will continue today. Before we start this video, there won't be a break today. We'll do this, it's a straight run through until 3:30. And so here we go. Thank you, André, for sharing this. So students from universities of 11 Indigenous nations in Quebec share their experience. L'éducation.
When they go to Montreal, if they want to study, let's say, in a medical field or a science field, what is being taught up north, there still needs to be a lot of work done within the school board, within curriculum development. I know it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not only the school board, it has to be the region, the province. I honestly don't think the fact that it's far is a good enough excuse, because it doesn't matter how far you are, we deserve the same type of education students get in the South.
Moi, j'ai dû quitter ma communauté pour étudier.
I had to leave my community to study. I was fully conscious that there were many people in the same situation as myself. I remember just yesterday, one of my cousins studied in law, and she left Picougan with her son to go to Montreal. During an exam, I would go and stay with her son in a park not too far away. in the close to the parking lot. And after her exam, she would go back to Picogan. So it's really complex gymnastics here, not to leave the community and study, or to leave it completely to attend university. So one way or the other, there's a lot of adjustments.
And my parents were hoping that this would allow me and my brother to maybe go to post-secondary education, to CEGEP, work, or do whatever we wanted to do. So my parents chose to send me to school in French. They were hoping that it would give me more opportunities that would enable me to work eventually and to just, live in Quebec comfortably. And because of that, I did not go to school in the community, and I did not learn Cree because of that also. So we spoke English at home, and then I went to school in French, and my father traveled a lot and worked a lot, so I never had the opportunity to learn Cree.
Sans la discrimination, sans du racisme ou de la
Without
discrimination.
being discrimination or direct racism, I still consider that I've had to face different challenges. When I registered for my PhD, my first topic, the overrepresentation of Aboriginal women in the justice system. I worked for 25 years in the justice system. I was admitted into, my first reflex was to be admitted to criminology. I was refused because my master's degree did not have a thesis. I found this strange because I finished my master's with 4.1 average out of 4.3. That's good. I knew that was good. And I had written a long letter saying that I knew that this criteria was required, but that I still had an essay, and that my 25 years in correctional services and the fact that I was First Nations who knew her culture could, from my perspective, be an element to be taken into consideration to be admitted to the PhD on this type of research. It wasn't considered, and I was refused. Knowing I was already starting to get intervention experience, and maybe I wanted to work in that area, I started looking for programs offering university certificates, a program in psychosocial interventions. So I said, okay, I'll try. I wasn't too hopeful because I said to myself, I didn't complete my CEGEP, but when I looked at the admission requirements, they still required 6 months work experience, and I had to be 21 years and older. So I did all that. I submitted my application. But when I got the acceptance letter, I was so happy to see that I had been accepted. I enrolled in many programs. The bachelor's degree in social work was my first choice, but in my mind, I did not believe that I would be chosen because it was a program that was limited number of students. At worst, I'll do a certificate, and I'll be okay with that to start with. But I was surprised to be accepted. Access is also in terms of time slots as well. To be able, we have classes Fridays and Saturdays. Access is also at the level of distance learning. So we have no choice now with COVID-19, but at the INAP, the Public Administration School, we were already doing that. So regionally, people were attending classes. That saves a lot of hours out on the road, because driving between Abitibi and Montreal in the middle of winter is not always fun. So in terms of flexibility, we must also consider the flexible evaluation procedures, because there are some writing essays in French when it's your second language or even your third language. It's not easy. in an administration course, if you're not assessing, they're evaluating if you're able to write. So, you know, full-time employees, administrators, they have dependents, they have families. We need to find ways to evaluate. This is a challenge, I'm sure, because people don't want a watered-down diploma. They want a diploma that will honor the skills. La seule vraie option.
French. Do I really have that capability in French? I was like, okay, you know what? Screw it. Oh, let's see where it goes. I did what I had to do. I had to do the language tests and wrote up as best I could a personal statement of why I wanted to do this. And I swear I was closing my eyes when I hit send for my application to go through. I was like, I didn't know what was going to come of it, but I got into the Santé Communautaire program with the Faculty of Medicine. So for me it was great, but I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was going to be, what it was going to come up with as an end product.
Puis quand j'ai fini mon certificat,
when I finished my certificate last year, and on top of that, the grades I had, I don't want to brag, but I had good grades. I was very happy, and I said, wow, I can do this. I'll continue, because actually my goal was to just get a certificate. I told myself, at least one certificate. And I thought, I think I'll go for another certificate. And I started to see how to get a cumulative bachelor's degree, because it became my objective. I said, I think I'll do that. It was in different blocks. So, okay, so I commit until the end of the master's degree. It was piecemeal, the micro program, the short program. Towards the master's degree, you can do it gradually. And that's perfect for my reality. I went to adult education after that. I was at the CDFM. It was another way of learning. And we were just Indigenous students there. There I really felt in my element. We're moving ahead at our own pace.
Au complet avec maths forte et tout. J'ai terminé mon secondaire aux adultes pas loin de 90, en 1999 ou 2.
In adult ed, 2000, the math. It's been, well, I'll stop the translation because I can't actually see what's on the screen. So I'll let you read the subtitles.
J'ai jamais voulu donner raison au monde qui ne croyait pas en moi, puis j'ai toujours voulu me battre.
Et là vient le lien avec le Centre d'amitié autochtone. On a une nouvelle intervenante qui est arrivée, une nouvelle monitrice, qui est une Huron-Wendat et qui coachait une équipe de cheerleading. Donc, ma passion du cheerleading, elle est venue au moment où elle m'a incité à faire partie de l'équipe. Et donc, je suis allé à un entraînement et j'ai adoré. Donc, c'était quelque chose que je ne savais pas qu'elle allait développer autant de passion en moi, mais qui m'a tracé un chemin non seulement vers le sport, mais également vers l'université, vers le cégep, donc vers le post-secondaire. Ce qui m'a motivé à aller à l'école aussi, c'est justement le préjugé sur les Premières Nations qu'on est des abandonneux, qu'on abandonne l'école. Donc, j'ai toujours entendu, ah, les Premières Nations, on le sait bien, ils sont pas tough, on le sait bien, ils lâchent l'école, on le sait bien, ils sont pas motivés. Donc, d'entendre ça, ça me faisait un peu mal. Et en même temps, je me disais, ouais, mais je vais leur prouver que c'est pas vrai. Moi, je suis capable d'aller à l'école, je suis capable d'être autochtone et d'avoir un diplôme.
When it was time to start applying for Concordia, I had a lot of input from professors and help. If I had any questions, they were willing to answer them. And the guidance counselor at Kiuna was absolutely amazing. She helped me with my application for Concordia, and that was just an amazing experience. Concordia also has amazing support with their Aboriginal Resource Center. I absolutely loved it there. I think if they did not have their Aboriginal Resource Center, I think I would have dropped out by the end of my first semester at Concordia.
Mon enjeu, c'était est-ce que je peux étudier de chez moi, parce que j'habite en réserve, j'habite près de la région de Montréal, à l'UQAM. Moi, j'ai 4 enfants, donc c'était difficile pour moi d'imaginer déménager tout mon monde. C'est possible avec les formations en distance. Aujourd'hui, on fait des petits miracles avec Skype et tout ça. Donc, on s'est fait un genre de plan de match et me voilà, je suis en train de compléter, je viens de compléter mon examen doctoral, donc j'étais à la mi-parcours de mon doctorat en études autochtones.
Culture, tradition, Wendat m'a beaucoup aidé. Tout mon parcours, c'est que je suis aujourd'hui, je le dois à ma famille qui m'a beaucoup aidé, qui ont cru en moi, ma conjointe, puis je les appelle aussi des poteaux, des gens qui ont été là pour moi tout au long là, du primaire jusqu'à l'université, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de monde qui sont revenus, qui sont venus me chercher, puis qui m'ont dit hey, ça serait bien que tu continues, me semble que tu as du potentiel. Fait qu'il y a beaucoup de monde qui n'ont pas cru en moi, il y a beaucoup de monde qui ont cru en moi. Et ça a fait en sorte que je suis arrivé ce que je suis aujourd'hui.
Production of this capsule is made possible thanks to the financial contribution of Chakapesh, Ministry of Education, and the federal department. Other partners? Thank you to the ambassadors for for their generous contribution under the coordination of Evelyne Rondeau, project manager, Indigenous project manager, Université du Québec.
Alors, merci à nos 11 ambassadeurs.
Thank you for our 11 ambassadors and your testimonials. Wondering if this capsule will be available for sharing. Yes, we can share it with you, and we invite you to share them in turn as well, because these are messages worth hearing and sharing. So you will find this on the site, on the reconciliation event. We have a link to the capsule, which is on YouTube, and we invite you to share them. This capsule has already been set up, but other ones will be coming. And there are other testimonials as well, which emphasize how many issues there still remain with accessibility to school. So to mention this I propose that we continue with a presentation by specialists on these questions of accessibility to post-secondary education for first people's students. There will also be Christopher Fletcher and Kathleen Jourdain. He is a professor at Department of Social Medicine, Preventive University level. He's Laval University. He works with the First Nations Inuit of Quebec for the Faculty of Medicine, the collaboration between 4 medical faculties in Quebec, the Health and Social Services Commission of the Quebec First Nations of Quebec and Labrador, which seeks to increase the number of Indigenous doctors in the province over the last 25 years. Dr. Fletcher has worked with several Indigenous communities in Northern Canada on subjects linked to relations between culture, places, and health, and also Kathleen Jourdain, who is an Innu from the community of Wahatnak Banyutanam, a coordinator of the medical faculty program for First Nations in Inuit of Quebec at the First Nations Health and Social Services Commission. Her role is to ensure the coordination of all the activities of recruiting, facilitation, development of internships, and advice for eventual candidates. Collaboration with different educational advisors of the 4 medical faculties who supports and accompanies the Indigenous students signed up for a doctor medical studies, become medicine, and he works in close collaboration with the person response to the provincial manager of the program for the implementation of these operations. So hello everybody. We've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but seeing as I'll be making the presentation in French, I propose that you post the English version to allow the English speakers to be able to see this more easily. And seeing as this is for the interpreters as well, it'll make things easier.
Donc, oui, aujourd'hui, je suis accompagnée de Christopher Fletcher. Donc, Christopher et moi, on travaille en
accompanied by Christopher Fletcher. Christopher and I are working very closely for all the candidates and resident medical students and First Nations and Inuit communities who through the medical faculty program and also through what we call the regular cohort. So I'm happy to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. And I also wish to thank for the sharing of this and these testimonials as well. I think this is a case for many of our parents. Thank you. And you are wonderful models of perseverance. So I'll share this presentation, like I said, in English. And I will be making the presentation in French.
Je sais pas si vous voyez, peut-être si je le fais de cette façon-là.
I don't know if you see it if I do it this way. There are some doubts. Anyways, I'll try to go through this more quickly to allow participants to ask questions or for us to be able to hold discussions with us.
Ça, c'est celle en français.
That's the one in French. Sorry.
Donc, Alexandre, est-ce que tu me confirmes?
So, Alexandre, can you confirm that we see the English presentation well? So, on the level of the medical faculty program, give you some background, this very quickly, it was established in 2008. Something that comes from a movement for the Association of Medical Faculties of Canada, and also which was recommended by the World Health Organization some years ago. It's an approach which was influenced by social health determinants, but to attempt to counter the regarding the health effect of social culture and disparity between the different candidates. So we have different 4 universities with a Faculty of Medicine. We talk about Laval University, McGill, Université de Montréal, and Université de Sherbrooke, which joined together to put forward recommendations that were set by the Association of Medical Faculties of Canada. And now this has created the medical faculty program for First Nations and Inuit in Quebec. The main objective of this program is to form First Nations and Inuit doctors so that they can offer culturally appropriate or adapted training to other First Nation and Inuit members. So regarding the other objectives, obviously, is to allow all of the physicians, not just First Nations and Inuit physicians, but improve the ability of all physicians to provide a high quality and culturally safe care to First Nations and Inuit patients we do this by implementing teaching modules to raise awareness of the reality of First Nations and Inuit in Quebec.
Le programme a aussi comme objectif de
Another objective of this program is to provide First Nations and Inuit medical students with mentoring services by members of these communities, and also to promote internships or health professions, rather, amongst First Nations and Inuit youth. We have the these models or the health schools or training. These gives us this could give us examples for sometimes elementary and high school students could have sort of like health fairs that allow these students to have a glimpse of what these what these careers and what the training could be to go into a health profession. We also want to promote internships and clinical training in First Nations. All of the are provided in the communities as well. And it's offered to First Nations and Inuit medical students and also to all students. This also for non-natives, so it could allow the non-natives to have a certain awareness of First Nations realities and culture. Mainly for admissions and access to studies. An admission process geared to First Nations and Inuit was put in place. So it's within the admission process to allow people to have access to studies and to continue the process that all other medical students will follow. So from 2008 to 2018, each year 4 places are set aside for First Nations and Inuit students. So for 10 years, at least, we had 4 First Nations or Inuit people, students to have access to medical studies. And since 2019, we have raised this number to 6 places per year for First Nations and Inuit students. So this is quite the success. We also have the presence of First Nations members on the different admission committees. So currently, we have individual interviews that take place. Yes, they come from First Nations, and when there is not a pandemic, we conduct these individual interviews on First Nations lands. And also in our admissions process. We have autobiographical notes where evaluators are all part of, come from First Nations or Inuit communities. So this gives us a certain degree of decision-making power to First Nations for First Nations. So quickly, we'll run through some statistics. For the last 22 years, we've had over 50 students, a resident or medical students and physicians have gone through the program. So if this program had not existed, we have about 50 people who probably wouldn't have been have obtained access to medical studies. That's one of our great success stories that I talked about. 100 and we had different internships as well. So 128 students have completed an internship in a First Nations and Inuit setting since 2012. So as I said, it's not just First Nations and Inuit students, but also non-native students who had the opportunity to spend time in First Nations communities and to gain a certain amount of cultural awareness. So also quickly here, we are presenting a graph or a chart which represents students, breakdown of students by nation. So we have a lot of Wendat and Innu people, and also we have Mohawks, Algonquins. We have the Mi'kmaq, Maliseets, and the Atikamekw. We also wish to have people who come from the Cree Nation as well, and from the Naskapi Nation, along with Inuit, to have a truer representation of all the communities and nations of Quebec. So here we have statistics. It's a breakdown of students by faculty. So many registered at Laval University. Then following this, it's about equal for the other three: McGill, Université de Montréal, and Université de Sherbrooke. Regarding the impact with the Health Commission and the research sector, we conducted an evaluation, an impact evaluation report, which highlights the following. That promotional and recruitment activities held in First Nations and Inuit communities promote the program and also generate interests in health sciences among youth, among whom the activities are held. And also they give non-Indigenous students experience that increases their cultural awareness with First Nations and the Inuit of Quebec, or in Quebec. So 96% of students admitted to the program have finished or are on track to finish their program. So that's quite a high success rate. And the preclinical internship is one of the best ways to raise awareness of First Nations and Inuit realities among future physicians. And finally, I mentioned this before, there is the enhancement of the Indigenous health component in the education curriculum at the 4 faculties of medicine in recent years. We have high hopes for this program and strongly believe that it will have a real impact on the health status of First Nations and Inuit in the long term in Quebec. And we're talking about cultural awareness or adaptation that can be generated by activities within and around the program. And obviously, the program is achieving its objectives, and this success is thanks to many two ministries. We have the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education, Superior Education, and the Ministry of Education. So we have a great partnership and a great degree of collaboration between the organization, our organization, and among the 4 universities that have a medical faculty. And we see more and more that young students are more prepared to take on the skills and preparation, are prepared to undertake medical studies. We have the commitment of these 2 departments to fund the program as well. We listen to the students as well. There's active listening to see how we can see what's missing, how we can facilitate their academic path. And this is another factor of the success as well. And there's also a strong partnership between our commission and the universities. Now I'm going to leave the floor to Christopher, who will mention an event we held recently, which was also a first and another success story within our program. So thank you, everyone, for being with us. Thank you, Ms. Ashini. I was really impressed by the testimonial of the 11 ambassadors who were naming all of the obstacles and the specific situations of First Nations youth that have to confront before when they try to continue their studies in the post-secondary sphere. So thank you and for this film, and congratulations for all of you who put this together. We see the different problems, the language, the distance, cultural factors. Now we're more familiar with having to cover large distances, and all the conditions that were named part of our medical students' backgrounds. But nonetheless, what I've retained from our success, like Kathleen said, is that there are a lot of issues, but they're not insurmountable. We have to recognize challenges. We just have to see how we can manage these problems, work with the students, and find solutions. So the success that we have is mostly due to our students. It's their success. And I think there's about 50 right now who completed the program. Shows the great amount of wealth and potential we have in our communities, in the Indigenous communities. 3 weeks ago, we had the first gathering of all the students from the medical faculty. Virtual gathering, unfortunately, but still, there's about 40 people were there. It took it was more than one gallery view on the screen. You needed 2 screens to see everyone. So we just had a small core of students at the beginning, and now we can say it's almost become a movement. And we can the doctors who are start working in a practical mode, and they will be coming they can get these students once they graduate. They can come back through our program and train other generation of students. I think that's what I wanted to cover. I just wanted to thank Kathleen and Alexandre for organizing and facilitating the meeting. Thanks to both of you. There's a question that just showed up in the chat. They asked us if there are similar statistics that exist in the Quebec side for nursing and pharmacists, pharmaceutical studies or train. I know that each is a medical factory. To see how to apply our success stories to other fields as well. So we can say that, yes, there is an interest. We see that the interest is there. But I don't have these statistics in front of me.
Merci. On a deux autres questions. D'une part, vous avez mentionné que les
And
études
also, you mentioned that
suivent le cheminement régulier.
that these studies, they follow a regular path, academic path, but also at the beginning, that you could see if there is a possibility to have tutoring or mentorship for these students, and what would characterize this mentorship for youth. And there's another question. Would you like to extend this initiative to other programs, to other programs within the medical faculty and health sciences? I have a few replies.
Tenter de sensibiliser l'ensemble des universités au Québec sur le modèle, en fait, qui est utilisé.
The University of Quebec is the model that we follow for training of First Nations Inuit medical students. We're trying to create a wave of initiative for different health and social services programs, but it's because it's basically because our organization focuses and works on these files, but I know that it's being done in different universities and different faculties. To either have places reserved to review different admissions terms and conditions to make more further facilitate access to First Nations and Inuit students. There's a snowball effect with this from this initiative, and we hope that this will be put forward throughout all the universities of Quebec. Regarding the statistics, no, we're mainly concentrating on medical students. Regarding nursing,
Autres programmes de la santé, évidemment, chaque
other health programs,
a ses modalités.
Each university has its own terms and conditions.
Pour obtenir 4 places, évidemment, ça a
So, to obtain 2 places, there were discussions with the 4 medical faculties because there were 4 places here. Now there are 6, but in 4 different universities. So it's a one program where there's 6 total places. Not necessarily be 1 place per university either. It's according to the choice of students. But there was a lot of goodwill as well from the Ministry of Health and Social Services, the Ministry of Education as well, and the 4 universities to have this all work well. And we saw that it worked well because we saw that they decided to add 2 more places as of last year. And yes, for the tutoring, each faculty has an educational counselor to help the First Nations within their faculty. So it's the First Nations person as well. This has been part and the role of the tutor is this tutor is offered as well to the Native students. It's not just from time to time. There is a follow-up, including cases that people that are not officially in the program. There are certain students who are not within our program, but they are welcome to use these services. So I'll just say a few words about the mobilization as well. Like Kathleen just said, we have
and we work with the FNQL HSSC. It's a wonderful way of organizing such a program. It's the only one of its kind at the university level provincially. So I think this is a really good approach. It's flexible for the student, and the student is at the heart of all of the decisions we make together. All the members of the faculty are there to help accompany the student. It's a very original and nice way of doing things. Thank you very much to both of you. There are many questions, and you have probably all noticed that we are late, we are later and later on our agenda, but I would like to highlight that your presentation was of great interest. There are questions for the administrative plan. For example, in what way were the admissions processes modified, the COTER? How did you set aside spots for the students? And it was asked if you could share your awareness module that you already share with other medical practitioners. So people can contact you directly maybe to see what could be possible. So if you allow, I would thank you at this time. Thank you for your presentation. It was so interesting. I am sorry not to be able to present you with all these questions. There will be other opportunities to share together. We also ask if the presentation could be accessible ulteriorly, and the webinar will be accessible shortly as well. They wanted to review certain slides with regards to statistics on the First Nations and Inuit students in the faculties. Maybe a quick question. How many students from First Peoples and how many places are reserved for them in the different years? Total or? About a dozen, I would say. Yes, thank you very much. There is a future for this kind of arrangement. We need more and more First Nations and Inuit medical practitioners, not only in our communities, but in the urban centers as well, especially since we know that there are more and more Indigenous people who are migrating towards the urban centers. And with the sad events of last fall in the Joliette Hospital, it shows how in the hospital centers there is a need for First Nations and Inuit medical practitioners. Thank you for all your questions. Sorry not to be able to answer all of those. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Kathleen. We'll see you soon, we hope. I would invite you now to go slowly to our next presentation by Mrs. Prudence Hannis, Executive Director of the Kiuna Institute, the wonderful Kiuna Institute, who celebrated 10-year anniversary last year. This was a dream for this First Nations college. So we thank her for being with us. She has done the sociology program at l'UQAM, but also INAP. And she is director of the Kiuna Institute since February 2011. So a decade of leadership at the Institute. Congratulations, very much engaged in defending the interests of First Nations, and over the past years had a significant role in the development of many strategies, governmental policies for Indigenous people in the province, but also nationally. Initiatives that were implemented and worked in collaboration with each of Quebec First Nations and collaborated with many Indigenous and non-Indigenous actors, civil society, governmental authorities in Quebec. Prudence, thank you for being with us today. Prudence, if I understood correctly, you had an introductory video to present, so I will let André, oh, I'm handling this. I'll take care of this. I'll let you do that. Thank you very much, Alexandre. Thank you, Mrs. Ashini, for this testimony. So much appreciated. This is an introduction to what I will present for Kiuna, and its reason for being, but also the predecessor at Kiuna. There's a small PowerPoint here, just with the first 3 slides, and then we'll have the video, just to set the table as I present to you who we are. Just one moment here. We've been working with technology for a year now, and we're still looking for things sometimes. Here we are. Alexandre, you confirm that you can see this? Absolutely. There we are. Wonderful. Yes. So, as Alexander said, I am director of the Kiuna Institution, a post-secondary institution designed for and by First Nations, the only one right now in Quebec. Just to give you an idea, we are in Abenaki territory in the center of Quebec, in the Odanak community, a bilingual community, about 500 residents. So we are not in an urban center, but in a First Nations community in a rural area. Although we are very close to the different urban centers, we're between Montreal and Quebec City, but very much closer to Trois-Rivières, Sorel, and Drummondville. So proximity services for the students that we welcome, and because our community is bilingual, we are able to offer services to the students from First Nations whose second language is English or French. Kiuna means ours in Abenaki. We have been in existence since the fall of 2011. The project was in the making for 20 years by the First Nations Education Council, an organization with whom we are still a part of, and who is, if you will, our supervisors, if you will. It's an association of 22 communities with 8 nations whose main mandate is to accompany the communities in the defense and the promotion of their interests with regards to education. The mandate was entrusted to us by the communities at the FNEC at the beginning of the 1990s to explore the possibility that the communities have their own post-secondary institution for their students. And there was a gap here that needed to be addressed as a pathway between high school, we have control of that, to universities and higher studies. So we got the authorization to move forward with the project in 2006, and we associated ourselves with the Abitibi-Témiscamingue CEGEP and Dawson College. We are still in partnership with these 2 establishments, and the model that we agreed to, this is a collegial study center model. Right now, we are operating as if we were a campus of the Abitibi-Témiscamingue and Dawson colleges. And what is important to specify is that all of the programs recognized by the Ministry of Education. So a student that comes to our college, his or her diploma will allow them to go to different universities or transit towards other CEGEPs as well. This is important to mention that the Kiuna College is inspired by a similar initiative that had been implemented in the 70s, the Manitou College, very similar with regards to its functioning, its targeted clientele, the programs offered, and also the living environment that we wanted to provide to our students. The main objective or goal, why do we exist? Why did the communities want to implement the Kiuna College? It's to increase access to post-secondary education, as well as success and graduation rates for youth and adults enrolling for post-sec. The means that the communities came up with was to create a unique environment in which programs, student services, human resources, teaching methods, and teaching materials reflect indigenous culture and traditions, while proposing a living model of social and cultural success. And I'll stop here, and I'll show a short video that will present what we look like. And I'll come back to certain aspects that I find important to highlight for today's presentation. Just a minute. I need to turn on, get the sound going here.
Excusez-moi pour ce petit... Donc, bon visionnement.
So, here we go.
Bova, and I'm from Ganawalga.
June Palmer, and I'm from Oldneck.
Puis je viens de là-dessus.
Kelia Washish, je viens d'Obedjon.
Kiuna veut dire nôtre dans la langue abénaquise, qui était tout à fait pour l'essence du collège ici, qui est effectivement
which was very appropriate for the college here,
aux Premières Nations.
Which was built for First Nations. What makes it unique is that it is in an indigenous community. The fact that we offer a social science program that is adapted to First Nations. It is unique because of its clientele, the First Nations from all over Quebec. And although it was not exclusively reserved for this population, so a non-indigenous student could be admitted into our institution. People didn't see the use of a dedicated institution for First Nations. Often the answers I got was, well, there are a whole bunch of post-sec institutions in Quebec. Integrate. Why don't they just integrate? And my answer was, if I were to tell you as a Quebecois to go to an Ontario or American institution and say there are some elsewhere, why don't you go elsewhere? Why would you have your own? What do you say? And the answer was, of course not. I need my culture. I need to preserve my culture. So it was the same answer I gave them. We did not make the error that other institutions make. They take a program and they add a little, a canoe over here and something else there and say, oh, we have indigenized our program and we include our indigenous clientele. This is folklore. This has nothing to do with it. What would we like to teach our youth for 2 years about our knowledge and how should this be structured? And starting with that, we said, obviously, we need history, notions of history, but we also need a very contemporary aspect because our youth must be comfortable as much with their ancestral values as in today's world. This is completely new. It's a unique program the world over. We have indigenous philosophers, Indigenous authors, arts, administration in the communities. What I find positive here is that these courses are by Indigenous people, for Indigenous people, for political science. Everything they'll do for programs will target Indigenous history, which we don't learn in normal colleges. We have general history from a Quebec perspective, but now it's an Indigenous perspective. I think that's what we need to gain back our identity. Of course, it's the first time that I go on live in another community. I come from Wendake, which is quite urban. And to come here in Odanak, it's more rural. But nonetheless, I find the same spirit, the community spirit. It's very similar to what we have at home. My past experiences in a college or in high school, I was subjected to racism. We've all gone through that, right? But today, I came to this school. It took 4 days for me to feel at home amongst my own people, even though we're people from Anawan, Bijawan, Pisamit, or from La Romaine. I feel at home, and they're all like me, and there's no discrimination. People don't look at me as if I was a savage, but as a friend, a school colleague. It's really positive. Sorry, this is inaudible. I went to a cégep in Quebec City. It was a good cégep. I found that the reality, I couldn't relate to that. I wasn't hearing what I was interested in. People around me didn't do the same things I was interested in. Their aspirations weren't the same as my own. And I felt apart. I was like in another world, like I was in another country. And I just dropped out. I left Cégep that same year. The adaptation was too difficult.
J'ai que de bons mots pour Kiuna. Ça va faire 22 ans que je suis à Odanak.
I have good things to say about Kiuna. I've been 22 years in Odanak, and 2 years I've been here now. For all of the Indigenous people, this is a way of affirming ourselves, to regain our identity. The youth will leave, and they'll bring Kiuna to their communities. They'll bring an opening. They'll bring new relationships, so that maybe the communities will speak more together. There are taboos, obstacles. You know, maybe between ourselves we had our own discrimination, and maybe these walls will be brought down as well. There's a lot of it's quite a page of history to be part of such a great social program or project. When we take a step back, what we see here, what we see the students doing, it's an important historical step of taking charge of our education by our nations, for our nations.
Wait before the next power comes around. Je suis tellement convaincue là.
I am so convinced that even if they don't stay 2 years, even if they do 1 session only, they will leave with a whole new perception of who they are as First Nations. They'll be a bit prouder of being a First Nation, and they will know that we are able and that we have potential, and that's what they have to leave with. And to leave with that, after that, anything is possible.
Donc, merci.
So thank you. What I did not mention, and I did this on purpose, is that the video that I just showed you is a video that was done at the very beginning of the Kiuna adventure, the second term or session, winter 2012. I found this interesting because certain issues that are raised by the students these issues were raised 10 years ago, the same issues 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and the same issues that were raised when the Manitou College came into existence in the 70s. Even if the conditions have improved with regards to access to post-secondary education, these are still comments that we hear from students. So just a reminder that it's a long way to go. Let's not lose hope. I think there's a lot of improvement that has been brought nonetheless. What I want you to remember from the Kiuna institution, it's the fruit of mobilization, political and social, from all of the communities in Quebec that wanted to put culture back at the heart of learning. The testimony of Mrs. Ashini, the introduction that was made by Alexandre when we started, I won't come back to that, but our cultures, our traditions were dealt with difficulty over the past centuries with the political and historical context that we all know about. And when we talk about the importance of adaptation for our interventions, cultural adaptations, and I'll finish with this here, there's a concept that is very that's in style right now, cultural safety. And I would like to discuss what this really means. Of course, an environment that is culturally safe implies that we be a part of the programs that are offered by their content, the films, the material we use. But over and above that, an environment that is culturally safe is an environment where we feel understood by the teachers, by the administrative staff, by the support staff, by those who are in charge of student services, by administration, the whole administrative team, management. It implies an awareness and being sensitive to people who also have a knowledge, not only theoretical, but they have knowledge of out there on the field of the environments, where students come from. Cultural safety is to also allow the student to feel comfortable. This is in the building as much in the physical space as in the welcome. Not only the first day or the first week, but on a daily basis, to allow for an environment where the student can be who they are, that they can express themselves in their language, they can come to school in moccasins, they can be who they are in everything they are, feeling that you belong. This is so important. When we hear the few testimonies in the video clip, we talk about community spirit. It makes me feel like home. It took 4 days for me to feel at home. It's a place where I feel I can regain my identity, affirmation. It's very important to make sure that the students feel that they belong to a group, a community. That's what we wanted to create. But the students very quickly told us, we feel like we're family here. So it's this feeling of belonging that we were able to create. It goes over and above the feeling of community. They feel they're in a family, and especially to feel valued. Again, not only at specific times in the school calendar and the activities, but feeling valued in all aspects of who they are, ancestral languages, the individual and collective successes, whether cultural, social, political, educational, and especially valued in a spirit of where we have the opportunity to see each other from another perspective, a perspective that is different from one that was projected upon us for too long, either through media or the dominant society. So a strong feeling of belonging, self-esteem, these are key elements for success, and also fosters access as well. If I insist upon this, it's to so that we leave this idea of mechanics, of adapting services and programs. We talk about decolonization and adaptation and indigenization, but if we don't intervene on these aspects of the development of this feeling of belonging and self-esteem, we're missing a big piece of the puzzle in this access that we desire, and also for reconciliation purposes. And of course, I must mention we have 115 graduates since 2013, and the training and skills allowed them to access all of the Quebec universities and elsewhere. Thank you very much, Prudence. And I add my voice to many others
Puis toute votre équipe, tout ce qui a été
who congratulate you for all what your team has done. As we said earlier, it's also the fruit of much mobilization on a large scale, social and political. And this institution was able to provide a space that is totally First Nation. This does not mean that the other institutions and colleges don't deploy a lot of energy. And over the past years, we saw many efforts deployed in the different post-secondary institutions to avoid to put an inukshuk in the lobby and think that that's a way of reconciliation. So I know that there are a lot of efforts made in many places, and your presence here today is a testimonial to that. I thank you, Prudence, for this presentation. And you saw this. We are a couple of minutes or seconds to the end of our second webinar. And of course, before thanking our speakers today, I would like to come back on an element that I mentioned right at the beginning. Of course, those who presented today and in the last webinar as well have expertise and experience on the field that is very interesting, but all of you, because of your personal experiences, you also have an expertise that we would like to be contributive to this. For a few minutes now, it could be later as well. We would invite you to click on a link that has just been added in the chat. So padletpoint.com that invites you to share your thoughts around 4 questions, and you'll be able to add your ideas. You can either like comments that have already been formulated or answer those. So there's a link to the Padlet activity in the discussion, in the chat. There are 4 main columns, and you can add to each of these main questions. First of all, what are the challenges for students of First Nations for access to post-secondary? What ways can we overcome these obstacles? Do you know inspiring practices? And how can we document and mobilize actors in this area. So this web page will be accessible. If ever you lose the link that's in the chat, you can also refer to the participants guide that was provided to you, and where you can click directly in the PDF version and you can go directly to this page. So we invite you to share your ideas, your examples of initiatives that you think could be useful.
Synthétiser l'ensemble de
So
vos
we
apports.
can be able to synthesize all the rest of your efforts in the upcoming webinar. So I would have liked to have less more time to read your answers as well, read them out and answer them. It'll be next time for the next webinar. It'll be held next April 8th. On the third theme, which is services offered to first people students in post-secondary institutions. So there's a whole range of services. We'll talk about the most central ones, the most urgent, the ones that offer support in the First Nations academic path. So there's a whole series of issues that surrounds the implementation of these services. To conclude, I wish to, of course, thank Ms. Ashini, who delivered a very heartfelt testimonial. And as I mentioned during the chat, I think Ashini, in Shefferville, seeing as he was the nurse in Shefferville, you probably helped perhaps one of the mothers of one of the participants give birth. So thank you for your life that's been devoted to the well-being of others, and thank you for your testimonial. I almost must humbly thank Ms. Kathleen Jourdain from the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador Health and Social Services Commission, and Mr. Christopher Fletcher from the Department of Social Medicine at Laval University. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Kathleen. And Prudence Hannis, who is the director of the Kiuna Institute, for her greatly appreciated testimonial. And to conclude, after all these testimonials were worthwhile due to your press. It was great to be together in such great numbers. So thank you for all being here. So we will get together once again April 8th for the third of our series of webinars. So I look forward to seeing you again. Have a good day. Thank you, everybody.